Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. We've got a very interesting show set up for you. All right, we're going to talk about schedules. We're also going to talk about South Carolina and Georgia. And the Vols did get a really nice schedule. We're going to discuss that. Georgia finally got a tough schedule. Last year was not tough on them at all.
Super easy, barely an inconvenience.
But this year they've got some teams they got to go head-to-head with that I think will give them some trouble. And then South Carolina finally got a really good running back.
You serious?
Yeah, I am serious. They really did. So we're going to talk about that as well. And we're going to talk about a couple of YouTubers that are trying to get me to stop talking about the possibility of sign stealing in South Carolina and their connection to Michigan and Connor Stallions, which I find very interesting. So let's get into Tennessee right now and their schedule. Now, as we head down through here, you can see it starts out pretty darn easy. We got Chattanooga at home, so that's an easy win. Then we're going to play North Carolina State, but it's the Duke's Mayo Classic, so it's kind of a neutral field as opposed to a home advantage for North Carolina State. So it's at the Bank of America Stadium, so I think we'll have plenty of tickets there. So it should be a fun game, and I think we should handle them, but that's not an easy win. But, you know, we'll be favored. Then Kent State, that's an easy win. Here's our first tough ball game. We got to play Oklahoma at Norman. So that's our first tough game. Then we got Arkansas at Fayetteville. That should not be too difficult there. They were terrible this year. Then we got Florida at home, which is where I like to play Florida. That's always a tough game for us just because it's Florida, but we should win that one. So at this point, even if we lost the Oklahoma game, we would be in good shape. We'd be 5-1 going into Alabama at Neyland Stadium. That's a ball game we need to win. We need to beat them, and they are beatable. We could have beaten them at their home stadium this year had we just finished it up. We had a 13-point lead on them. Then we've got Kentucky at Knoxville. That's an easy win.
Mark Stoops is 2-9 against this team, and to walk around this place before the game, I was disgusted. The smugness of those guys just walking around like, we're going to walk in here, we're going to kick your ass, and you can't do anything about it. And it made me sick. And you know what? They did it. They still did it. What the hell? Can we just beat this team? I know that Mark Stoops has done a lot of good things. This is his one really bad thing. The stupid stat about beating teams with a winning record and taking the next step and blah blah. Just freaking beat Tennessee, please. Can we just stop losing to this stupid team with their stupid orange colors, and their stupid song, and their get their on out of here.
Mississippi State at Knoxville, that's an easy win. Then we've got Georgia in Athens. That's a real tough game right there. That's going to be rough. And as usual, every year we've got to play Alabama and Georgia.
But of course.
It's just the way it is. The sun comes out, we're playing Alabama and Georgia, two of the toughest teams in the country. And so be it. You know, that's maybe why we've got easier teams spread out, like Mississippi State. And, of course, we always play Vanderbilt. But we also picked up Arkansas. So I think what happens is they try to weigh it. You know, it's like, oh, they got to play these two really tough SEC schools. Plus Oklahoma is now in the SEC. So they give you some easier games to try to make it more fair. And then we've got UTEP and Vanderbilt, which are easy wins. I see 9 wins there pretty darn easy. 9-3 is probably, I don't want to call it the floor. 8-4 is probably the floor like it was this year. But 9-3 is right there, and 10-2 is very much in play for us, which would almost certainly get us in the playoff. 11-1 is not out of the question. It just depends on how Nico plays. I think our defensive line is going to be great. Our offensive line is going to be just real solid. All our guys seem to be coming back. And we were great rushing the ball last year. We were great stopping the run. And we're totally rebuilding the secondary. All of our guys that we've had this year are pretty much gone. And we're bringing in all the 4-stars now, which should help our secondary quite a bit. We'll probably have some growing pains that we'll see in this Iowa Citrus Bowl, but it's time for a change in that secondary, and we're bringing in talented guys, and they're out there in the portal right now offering a bunch of defensive backs. So I think we're going to see a total rebuild in the defensive backfield, which has really been our Achilles heel. So if Nico plays well, like I said, 10-2, 9-3, right in that area is probably what I'm thinking for next year. And who knows, you know, if Nico's fantastic, you might have a magical run like we did in 2022. But I can tell you, I really like this schedule. It's terrific.
I like it a lot.
Absolutely. Now let's get into Georgia. Georgia's actually got a tough schedule for a change. Now last year, they had a real piece of cake. They had like one tough ball game, and that was playing us at Neyland, and we laid a big fat egg. But hopefully we won't do that this year. I feel like having Nico come in should really kind of change the momentum for us. And we weren't bad this year, 8-4, but I like it when our floor is 8-4. I remember back when 5-7 was our floor. So going 10-2 and then 8-4 last 2 years, that's not too bad when you average 9 wins during the regular season. But they start off with a tough game playing Clemson at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is considered neutral, even though it's not terribly neutral. Then they got a piece of cake win against Tennessee Tech. They got to go to Kentucky. They always whoop Kentucky. Kentucky tries to play Kirby smart ball because that's Mark Stoops. That's what he tries to do. And you just can't do that when you don't have the Jimmies and Joes. Now, they will have Brock Vandergrift, so there's going to be a little bit of an intriguing matchup right there because Brock was their 5-star guy that got beat out by Carson Beck. So I think there's some intrigue in that. A lot of people will be watching that ball game. Then they got to go to Alabama at Bryant-Denny Stadium. That will be a super fun ball game. I'm so glad they're finally playing Georgia. Why Alabama and Georgia never play each other is ridiculous unless it's in the SEC championship game. They should play every year. They've been the 2 best teams the last decade, and they never play in the regular season. So I'm glad to see that. Then they got to play Auburn, and Auburn had Georgia beat this year, man. They flat out did. Carson Beck and that fantastic tight end sort of saved the day for Georgia, and Georgia had a lot of close scares this year. They were not as unbeatable as they were the year before. Their defense wasn't quite as good. Then they got Mississippi State. That's easy. Then they got to go to Texas. That's yet another tough ball game. I tell you what, they got some tough games in here. Then they'll play Florida. They'll beat them. Florida's not very good. Got to go to Ole Miss. That's no easy win right there.
You walk over, but you're limping back.
Then they're going to play Tennessee, and we might give them a real game this year. I feel good about that game that I think we can at least hang with them. And, who knows? You stay in there tight till the fourth quarter, anything can happen. Then they got the UMass Minutemen. That's going to be a terrible whooping. And then Georgia Tech, they'll handle them, of course. But I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see 6 tough ball games for them. Last year they had 1 or 2. This year they got 6. So I don't think it's going to be super easy for them by any stretch. And they're going to have to really fight, and should be pretty darn interesting. Of course, Georgia's Georgia, so, they'll be favored in almost every game. But they got 6 tough games. So should be a lot of fun for Georgia fans. Now we got to talk about something shocking. Rocket Sanders is transferring to South Carolina, which he's a star, man. I'm telling you, this guy's a heck of a runner. Now last year he was hampered by injuries and didn't play a whole lot, but the year before, man, he was something else. He finished second in the SEC rushing with 1,400 yards in 2022 with a 6.5-yard average. Only Judkins of Ole Miss was better. So like I said, in 23, he only ran the ball 62 times because he was injured so much. But the dude is big. He's 240 pounds. He can catch the ball too. I mean, he's a very good player. And South Carolina, man, they haven't been able to keep a running back. They lost Marshawn Lloyd, who I thought was terrific. And then they lost Mario Anderson to the transfer portal, who was, he was a decent running back, but, he's not this guy. So I would think South Carolina's pretty excited. They also picked up another running back who's decent, probably along the lines of a Mario Anderson. But this is a big-time get for them, and they needed it. They needed something positive. Having Juice Wells, looks like he's probably going to Ole Miss, and I'm not sure where Anderson's going to go. But they've had a real tough time in the transfer portal, so picking up this guy is huge for them and should lift their spirits a little bit. Now, one thing about South Carolina, I've had multiple South Carolina YouTubers. They want me to stop talking about that sign-stealing situation and that Connor Stallions may very well have helped out South Carolina when they beat 2 top 10 teams in a row. And if you remember, of course, I've covered this a lot, and I've gone over the circumstantial evidence. If you've watched this channel, you've seen it. I'm not going to go over all of it again. If you want to see that, you'll see it on multiple videos prior to this where I talk about Shane Beamer and the sign-stealing or alleged sign-stealing. And that's this mountain of evidence that I showed you. And there's actually even more than this. I just couldn't fit it all on this one mountain. I'd have to have 2 mountains. But anyway, 2 of these YouTubers really want me to stop talking about it. I don't know if they're worried about it. I don't know if they see the forest for the trees on this, because it is extremely odd how South Carolina, who couldn't hardly score a touchdown prior to playing us, all of a sudden scored 9 in a row. And then they beat Clemson the following week, 2 top 10 wins. And you would think they'd follow that up into 2023, but they started out 2-6, which is really weird. And they didn't wear their magic wristbands. It's funny, they had those magic wristbands against us for the first time all year, but they didn't wear them the next year in 2023. They lost both those ball games, of course. So it's just weird how all of a sudden, all that circumstantial evidence that came out about a report in footballscoop.com about there was a person with direct knowledge that Connor Stallions may very well have reached out to a team that could block teams that were getting in the way of Michigan, which would have been, of course, Tennessee and Clemson, which was number 5 and number 9. And Michigan, had they lost to Ohio State, they were really worried about those two teams. So reaching out to South Carolina would have made a lot of sense. And that's sort of what a lot of people think. Now, of course, it's alleged. We don't have the proof yet, but a person with direct knowledge thinks that it happened. So pretty interesting. But these two guys, it's a Carolina Jackpot and another fella, Twisted Rooster, really want me to stop talking about this, and they have really been coming at me on YouTube.
Now Kane!
Okay, it's not quite that bad, but they don't like me talking about it. It's really got them worried, and it's probably because they're concerned. Look, if it came out, they could lose their precious, which is Shane Beamer, which South Carolina people love Shane Beamer. When they went into 2023, they thought they had the coach of the year that was getting ready to really rock and roll. That's why they extended him, paid him a whole lot of extra money. But then they, went 5-7, losing record. And I don't know, maybe he's not so precious anymore. We'll see. But they don't like me talking about it at all. And as a matter of fact, there's a third Gamecock YouTuber that's come at me, and it's even upset me the most.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it off.
That's right. Even Foghorn's after me. I mean, that's bad. That's one of my childhood favorite cartoons. So, I mean, I'm telling you, these Carolina YouTubers, man, they're not letting up, which tells me this. When you start taking a lot of flack, probably means you're over the target. So they may be getting a little worried over there in South Carolina land that we may be getting real close. And, of course, with the NCAA, the FBI, the PTA, they're all investigating Michigan and Connor Stallions up there. And poor Connor, all he's got left as far as business is to be able to sell those used vacuum cleaners. And I don't know why he's into vacuum cleaners. I really don't understand it.
I said, don't disturb you. I'm cleaning my room.
Yep, but that's all he's got. So, unfortunately, look, this is a guy that should have won the Broyles Award for Assistant Coach of the Year or Analyst of the Year. I mean, he comes into Michigan, and Jim Harbaugh was winning 69% of his games. Then suddenly he jumped to over 90%. When Connor showed up, couldn't beat Ohio State for 8 years, and now he's beaten them 3 times in a row. This third one, they won by 6 points at home. I'll give them that one. But also realize, think how much that helped their recruiting during those 2 years. When they beat Ohio State twice and went to the playoff twice, they couldn't get in the playoff prior to that. So they ought to put a statue of Connor in front of their stadium, because that guy is amazing. But as far as South Carolina and Shane Beamer, I'm not going to stop investigating this, nor is the NCAA or the FBI. So I'm not going to stop. Reese, just tell them.
It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. And it absolutely will not stop. Ever.
That's right. And we're going to find out one way or the other. It's going to come out. We'll see. I can't prove this. It's alleged.
Are you sure?
But I don't see them winning those 2 games in a row and suddenly going from where they couldn't score a touchdown to 9 in a row. And then they beat Clemson at Clemson. Really? And their special little magical wristbands. So we'll see. But I did want to cover all this stuff today. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover, of course, the SEC. I like covering the SEC. And, of course, this big Michigan scandal. And I've been kind of watching Ohio State, too. They're kind of fun to watch. Of course, I'm always going to cover my Vols. And I'm loving the schedule, man. I think this is a great schedule for us next year. And I am glad that Georgia finally has to play a tough schedule. This last year was a piece of cake for them. They kind of just sleptwalked through it undefeated until they got to the final conference game, get beat by 3 points, and they get kicked out of the playoff. That'll never happen again with the 12-team playoff, thank goodness. We won't have any more of these horrible scandals. We've got Florida AG suing the college football playoff. Possibly, they are investigating right now, $1 million being set aside by the governor for a possible lawsuit. So hopefully with the 12-team playoff, we'll never see teams getting cheated like they did this year. And if you've not subscribed, it's on your right, my left. Just hit this little button right here. I would appreciate it. Doesn't cost you a penny. And right over here is the most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.